From the View My Sports studios, it's The Breakdown with your hosts, Roger Tillis and Chuck Olesker. Joining us today on The Breakdown, she's the former University of Michigan softball pitcher and the 2005 NCAA national champion, Jennie Ritter. Hi, thanks for joining us today on The Breakdown. Today's guest we have with us is softball royalty. We have Jennie Ritter from the University of Michigan back in the 2005 national championship team. We are blessed to have her joining us today because we are going to be talking about nothing but softball. Softball, recruiting, high school, college. Hopefully we're going to get all the information that we need to help the kids out there that are, striving to get the coveted scholarship for themselves. I'm Roger Tillis, your host, and of course, we have our co-host and engineer, Chuck Olesker.
Yes.
I say we get on it.
Let's get on it.
Because we've got, and it's funny, I was going to do a little intro for you with all your accolades and everything, and I went onto the website and I started looking at everything. I thought, God, I'll need a scroll. We'll be here for a bloody hour. I had, and in my defense, I was a football guy and a track guy and all that. And I try to pay attention to all sports, but, there's just so much going on. I really didn't know who Jennie Ritter was. Right. And so when we started, of course I met you, through Chuck. He was giving me information. And so I started doing some research and I thought, holy cow, you really are softball royalty. I'm an ex-athlete. I'd like to still think I'm an athlete, but of a different caliber.
Yeah.
I recognize, talent. I recognize, achievements. A lot of people just kind of take it because there's just so much going on. But you really, you achieved the highest possible level. You won a national collegiate championship in softball as a pitcher back in 2005, and then everything else, USA national team, you traveled the world. Tell us a little bit about just all this cool stuff that's been happening with softball for you.
Well, there's no doubt that the 2005 national championship brought up a ridiculous amount of opportunities. I graduated with an engineering degree and expected full out to be a 40-hour-a-week engineer somewhere in some internship building into a job.
Oh, where's your T-square?
Do they
even use those anymore?
I'm a little bit of a nerd, right? So anyway, obviously you get in the 2005 year. I had a challenge of beating out one of the other pitchers on my team. We were kind of neck and neck throughout the entire preseason.
Nice.
Jumped into regular season and then ended up beating her out for a couple of reasons, and they stuck with me throughout the finals. Well, that whole time I was pushed to keep getting better and better and better. So naturally, the way our team worked was just one person pushed every single person on the team. It made us better.
Great.
Our freshmen were outstanding. Sam Finley obviously hit the home run to win the World Series. Outstanding freshmen. When you have freshmen that are leaders, forget about it. You're in a good place, right? You're in a great place.
Sure.
So everything kind of fell into place there. When we got to, and we can go into this in detail later, I'm sure, but when we got into that World Series final, it was hysterical how we were all acting because even the coaches had never been to the World Series final.
A little giddy.
Yeah, they were running around. They were telling me I had to ice bath because I had thrown so many innings. They needed to ice my legs. So my catcher, who's my roommate at the time, was bringing in bags of ice to the tub and filling it up, making sure they're rushing to get me in there to get me ready for the next game. My coaches are running around and everybody's like, we don't know what to do. This is the first time. It was hysterical. So there's a first for everything. And then once we won, it was kind of one of those surreal moments that. Even now, everybody says it takes a while to connect and to make sense of it. Even now, I don't think I make sense of how big it was. Following that, being able to play USA was a big deal. I ended up going from USA. I tried out for the 08 Olympics. I think I missed by one pitcher. If they took one more pitcher, it might have been me, which is sad. But at the same time, you do what you can and you are given opportunities.
Sure. Well, and it goes to show the quality and level of competition.
Right.
Absolutely. Because, you obviously no slouch, and to miss out.
Absolutely.
The competition out there is
tremendous.
Well,
you're competing against Jenny Finch and Kat Osterman and Mom Cabot. When you're competing against people like that, you've got to bring your A game. And if there's only one regret I've ever had in softball, it's that I don't think I prepared well enough to get to that that 08 Olympics. So,
sure.
So that I kind of kicked myself for that. But, after that, I had an agent for broadcasting some other things. And he called me up and said, listen, I got a call from a coach in Japan, Team Toyota, and said, I want the best pitcher that didn't make the Olympics. So they went on. They took me out there. I brought a hitter with me from Northwestern, which is funny. Funny story there is she had my number. We went back and forth, and and we hated each other. I didn't know her. I called her out of the blue because I needed a good hitter to come with me to Japan, and she came. And like I said, we hated each other, but only because we kind of beat each other once or twice, you know.
Right.
And you know, we went out there, and that was an incredible opportunity. I ended up tearing my labrum in my shoulder. But the opportunity was incredible. Traveled the country, learned more about their culture, had that ability to kind of understand kind of world culture, which I didn't really have a whole lot of experience even traveling with USA and that stuff.
Right.
It's more like a vacation when you're doing that. When you're living there, it's a big difference. So, you know, after that, I came back and I had a million different opportunities to kind of be in softball. And my passion has always been, I think there was an interview I did right after we won the World Series that said, you know, what do you want to do? What's your life goal? And I said, you know, all I want is for every kid that I come in contact with to be able to experience what I just experienced today. And it was that level of whatever I can do, whatever I can share with these kids. At that moment, it was so easy because it all clicked and it all made sense. So if I can share these tools with the kids that I come in contact with, they'll have a better chance of getting there.
Nice.
So for me, that was, you know, I could have coached in college. I could have done all kinds of things. But for me, it was, you know, let's get them on the ground level and build these kids. So obviously now, I'm doing pitching lessons. I'm coaching a travel softball team, and I'm broadcasting, so I'm able to, you know, analyze, you know, the game for kids as well. So those have been my focuses, and I love it. I can't complain. It's been a huge opportunity for me.
Sounds like you have all kinds of you know, time to just hang out and do your own thing, right?
That's the downfall of working for yourself. You don't ever have time to,
That's right.
to do
That's
anything.
right.
You just have to keep going.
But, you know, it's a passion.
Yeah.
You know, you always hear about having passion in the sport. And, you know, you can see those athletes that hit a certain level and they're missing that something. You know, and that something is passion. It can't always be a business or about the money. It's got to be about competing. It's got to be about, you know, what you love. And, of course, like they say, when you're doing something that you love, it's really not work. Like us. We love this. We're not working. We're messing around all the time. Now, Jennie, you said something about, you know, the Olympics and you know, how these opportunities present themselves and things were, you know, starting to click and whatnot. At what point, though, you know, when you're so focused on the college game and you're, you know, just the daily grind of it, I mean, at what point do you kind of go, maybe I can get to the Olympics? Or do you really even have time to think about it? It just happens, and then either you're prepared or you're not. Because like you said, you didn't really prepare to get to that level.
Right,
Expand
yeah.
on
I
that.
mean, well, let's remember that in between 04 and 05 in that summer, I was taking an internship for engineering. So you know, again, where my route was going. I was getting my internships in. And when I was in 04, I was mediocre at best, had kind of an average record. Jumped into 05, and then all of a sudden, that happened so fast. And you don't really know. I mean, you've never been there, so you don't know what kind of opportunities it brings you.
Sure.
And then once you get out of that, I had the opportunity to play for USA. And I remember it was one time at Thanksgiving, and I got a call. Jenny Finch had mono, I believe, but I think it was a cover because she was pregnant at the time. She was pregnant at the time. I could be wrong on that, but
Yeah.
let's say for the sake, because that's what they told me, she was sick, and they needed to pick up a pitcher, so they picked me up, and it was my first chance to play with the national team, and all of a sudden it clicked, like, whoa, I have this chance, I have this opportunity. Well, as time had gone on, we found out that 2012 was not an option for the Olympics. Now, my whole dream from a kid was I want to play in the 2012 Olympics. I didn't think I'd be ready for the 08, but I wanted to play in the 2012. Obviously, we'll get to that, but when I was 12 years old, there was probably no chance of me getting to the Olympics.
Sure,
but
gotcha.
That was, that was my dream. And when I found out, I was actually at the Canada Cup with the elite team, which is kind of like I don't want to say the farm team for the national team.
Sure.
It was kind of the team below it.
Right.
And so
Makes
we were
sense.
developing, as part to go into the national team. So our intention, all of us on that team, was to make a run for the 2012
the Olympics.
We got voted out. And all of a sudden, not only was that devastating, I mean, they interviewed us, they asked us what it felt like. And, it was like tear-jerking, upsetting.
Yeah, I bet that was a fun interview.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, how do you not cry in that moment? But so I decided at that moment, my chance has to be make a run for the 08. And, you know, like I said, I didn't prepare because I didn't necessarily know how much was put into it. My whole life, for a lot of it, I had been on the upper level of athletes, and I have never been challenged by a group of 5 or 6 pitchers that were all at my caliber. You know, maybe one that I had to, but it was like I lost my focus, and I didn't realize that I had to put more time in to really get past that level. And so like I said, I regret that moment just because I wish that, you know, I could have prepared a little bit better. That being said, that I got as far as I did, especially in the 08, because I didn't think there was any chance that I made it to the tryout, that I became one of the top group that they were even considering. That's huge. And, you know, you can't go back on that and really feel that that's too much of a regret. But I definitely, I mean, if I go back, I'm thinking, if I just worked out one more time, or if I just did one extra pitching workout or whatever, I could have gotten in. But.
Well, you figure, too, though, I mean, 4 years, that's a hell of a long time to take out of your preparation time, what you feel you know, when your sights are set that far ahead, and all of a sudden it's no today. Whoa, hey, you know, I mean, you know what that's like where, you know, in the game of softball as a pitcher, all of a sudden somebody can't go, you got to be ready. I know you just pitched, but you know what I mean? I mean, that's sort of an analogy.
Absolutely.
And you know the difference it makes. So to have a 4-year stint all of a sudden erased off your calendar, and it's like, well, all you can do is your best.
Exactly.
And you still almost made it.
Right.
I mean, that's amazing. Right. That is tremendous. Now, softball for you started when?
Well, I played t-ball. You know, my dad, this is a funny story. I told my dad was the coach, and he said, whatever you do, don't stop running. When you hit that ball, just run. And he wanted us to run through the base, obviously. When you get older, you understand that. Well, I took it literally ran around every single base, and I got tagged out, I think, 3 times. And t-ball kids are like, what's going on?
Yeah, all of a sudden, the ball starts flying all over the place, you know?
Right. But, I mean, that was my first real experience. I did coach's pitch. I did rec ball for a while. My sister, one of her classmates, joined travel ball. Michigan travel ball was not that big back when we started. And one of her classmates joined travel ball. They needed a pitcher, so they brought her on. My sister was a pitcher as well.
And about how old are we talking about now?
She was 14. I was 12.
Okay.
And it come to find out, the 12U team was dying for players. They only had 8 players or something like that. So they put me on, and I knew nothing about softball, really. I mean, I was a rec ball pitcher. I could throw hard, but I didn't take lessons. I didn't learn anything. It was just me having a strong arm.
Sure. You were like the athlete.
Right. Yeah. So they threw me in, and, you know, prior to that, I played soccer. I played basketball through high school, but basketball, all these other sports, and I hate them all. I did jazz dance. I did ballet. I tried all these things, and yeah, I know.
I mean, but the fact is, at least you were out there trying everything.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
And we'll get into a little bit about that, because that's a good point.
Yeah, a little push from the parents, but you know, I ended up falling in love with softball. It was that 12U team. And I'm a stickler for this. If you talk to people now, and I have 9-year-olds or 10-year-olds, I'm a stickler for enjoying yourself that first year, because that is a ton of softball. And if you're not used to playing that much softball, it can turn into a job pretty quickly.
All of a sudden, it's like doing homework.
Right. And so I had a blast. At 12 years old, I started, and kind of wanted to get better from then on, because I just loved it so much.
Now, did you play any other position, or once you got on that team, it was pretty much, I'm going to be a pitcher, or were you, because of your athleticism, were they just putting you in all the meat positions, shortstop or short field or wherever? I mean, what was
my dad was a pitcher at Michigan. He played baseball at Michigan. So he was a pitcher at Michigan. My sister wanted to be a pitcher. Ended up going to Michigan, by the way. So I'd be the 3rd-generation pitcher going to Michigan. But my dad had always talked to me. He played, he was a pitcher, and he was a first baseman. And when he got to college, he always told this story of, my coach walked up to me and said, listen, you can only choose one position. Do you want to be a pitcher, or do you want to be a first baseman? And my dad said, I want the ball when the game is on the line.
Nice.
And whenever he said that, for me, I was like, oh yeah, I know.
I just got goosebumps.
That's what I want, and right. And so for me, that was like the moment where I'm like, you're right, Dad, I want the ball, you know? So then it was that moment of, learning how to be in the spotlight, because pitching is, you're there. You're on an island, right?
You.
Yeah. And so learning to be in that spotlight, and, bad things happen. I hit players. I broke a girl's cheekbone. I mean, there's some things I went through because I was wild. I mean,
guess I'm not going to ask her to go out back after the show and see if I can tag her. Yeah,
that's right.
Never mind. We'll go to lunch.
Right. But I mean, there were some growing pains of it all. But above all, it was always, I want that ball. I want to be in charge, and I want to grab that and take it and run with it and lead my team that way.
That's outstanding.
So.
That's awesome.
Now, how fast does one throw? How fast are you? Or were you?
I was clocked, and this is funny because most players are throwing around 70 now, but I was clocked at 70 twice, 70 miles an hour. And I typically, my drop ball was 68 miles an hour.
Jeez.
I hit 68 when I was a junior in high school, I believe, or a sophomore in high school, I think.
Wow.
And that was fun.
And people don't realize that. I mean, in softball, the distance from mound to plate is shorter. The movement of the ball, if anybody who's watched it, is just crazy. It's you think they're throwing one of those highlight hook things because of the way the ball can move.
Right.
But that ball coming in underhand at 68, 70 miles an hour is like standing on a baseball plate, in a box, 100 miles an hour. I mean, it's amazing.
And this is before
how freak that is.
This is before they moved the mound back to 43 feet. So I was throwing from 40 feet, 68 miles an hour. Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
no thanks.
Yeah.
No. I'd rather hit people on the football field than be hit by somebody.
Exactly.
Now that's the thing too. I mean, I've been hit by. I mean, I play baseball. I got hit by balls. I've hit people. I could smoke the ball, but boy, I had no control. I mean, getting tagged by a softball, that hurts too. I mean, I don't care. You get hit by a marshmallow going 16 miles an hour. It's gonna hurt, but a softball, I mean, you get some big stitch marks placed on you.
Oh, absolutely. They
like
always say there's nothing.
There's
nothing soft about it. But yeah, I mean, I like I said, I was wild, and I was never afraid of throwing it in on somebody. So the girl at 14 and under ball, I'm throwing 63, 64, and I threw a rise ball, and she turned into it and hit the right side of her face. And that was, the parents were screaming, "Get her out of the game!" The ambulance came, the police department came, the fire department came, and I'm thinking, I'm gonna get
life's
arrested.
over.
My life's over.
Here's my glove.
That's right.
I know, and I had to apologize to her after the game, of course, but by then her face was literally black and blue all the way around her eye. I mean, it's
part of the game, though.
It's part of the game, but try telling that to a 13-year-old, that their whole life depends on, just not being, whether it's embarrassed or making somebody else hurt or whatever it was.
Sure.
Those are those growing pains that kids go through. And my 9-year-olds, when they hit players, my lessons, I always ask them, how'd they handle it? Because if they don't handle it well, then we have to kind of work their mentality to get them to handle it better, because it is part of the game.
Well, and it's a psych thing, too, for the kid that gets hit all of a sudden. I was flinching in the box, and I hadn't even been hit yet. So, once you're hit, it's like all over.
Then you assume it's going to be happening.
And for many in baseball and softball, once they got popped, their game's done.
Sure.
And some can come back, some can't. I mean, it is. It's a pretty... That's a hard part of the game. But, that's part of any sport. There's always going to be that injury aspect.
Right. So, that's why you play, right?
I still would rather be on the mound pegging people than getting pegged.
That's right.
Now, what about hitting? How were you as a batter?
I did actually. I hit in high school. I took hitting lessons. I led my conference in doubles.
Wow.
I was slow,
Very
they probably should have been triples. But I was slow as all get out. So I could hit. I never hit in travel ball very often, but I did have some power to my bat. So when I got to college, I did train for hitting. I went through my entire freshman year. I ended up getting sick. In October of my freshman year, I got vertigo and an infection in the back of my brain. So I staggered everywhere I went.
Oh, wow.
And so when I came back from that, the first time I tried to come back, I threw 10 pitches and couldn't see straight. I mean, the room was just spinning. And there was a point where I thought I'd never pitch again, which breaks my heart thinking about. But I remember that moment thinking, I'm done. There's nothing I can do. And
boy, that had to be just, like you said, all of a sudden you see everything gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And once I got back from that, I think that moment I finally could get back and was easing my way through rehab and everything to kind of compensate for my nerves in my head, that I came back to pitch, and the option was, and my coaches told me, listen, you can train for hitting if you want, but we need you as a pitcher. What do you want to do? If you want to do both, you just have to make sure you put the time in. And I said, listen, I don't know if I'm ever going to be the pitcher I want to be. So I focus on pitching only and kind of gave up that hitting, trusting, the fact that obviously I'm at Michigan. I'm not probably going to be in the top 9 anyway. So why train for something? Why don't you put your effort into something that you can really help your team in? So I did give it up.
Very interesting. I tell you what, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to talk about that a little bit because I don't think a lot of the younger players realize, they all want to, they want to be the best defender, but they also, you got to have the big bat. I mean, in the youth ball, it seems like but that's not necessarily the case. And we'll get into some details, maybe some tips and things that you can share with us, put some myths to rest, and then we'll just take it from there.
Perfect.
All right, we'll be back in a few minutes. Make sure you tune back in. Hi there, this is Roger Tillis.
And Chuck Olesker from the BreakDown and ViewMySport.com.
Athletes Helping Everyone Reach Out Against Bullying was founded with the purpose of bringing awareness to and educating our youth about the lifelong effects of bullying and how they can prevent it.
Be a Hero Against Bullying is not about religion. It's not about politics. It's not about money. It's about compassion. It's about caring. It's about being a friend.
As an athlete, you carry a lot of influence among your peers. They admire and look up to you. A gesture as simple as inviting a target to sit down with you during lunch or walking into the next class can save lives. Student athletes are making their schools a safer place and saving lives just by being a friend.
Learn more about this anti-bullying campaign by visiting www.beaheroagainstbullying.org or visiting us on Facebook. Thank you.
All right, thanks for joining us back here at the Breakdown. I'm Roger Tillis, your host, here again with our co-host, Chuck Olesker, and today's very special guest, Jennie Ritter. Before we get started back into some of the particulars of what we want to do, we want to recognize our ViewMySport.com Athlete of the Week. And actually, we're going to let our guest roll it out for us. So, Jennie, have at it.
All right. Today's ViewMySport.com Athlete of the Week is... drum roll. Lynette Flores. She is a pitcher from the University of School of NSU down in South Florida.
Nice.
Lynette, keep pitching, keep doing your thing, girl, and keep getting better.
That's right.
From the horse's mouth, so to speak. I tell you, we get a lot of athletes that come through, obviously, View My Sport, and it is always a treat to look at some of these profiles and see what the kids are into, not just in the sport, but the grades and the extracurricular activities, the community service and whatnot. And Lynette, you are an outstanding example of what we're looking for in our ViewMySport.com Athlete of the Week. So, as Jennie said, keep pitching, stay in school, get the grades where you want, and your opportunities for scholarship will pop open for you.
Yes.
All right, very good. You did well. That was
thank you.
Guy, you've done this before.
Yeah, you may have a future in this whole announcing thing.
Gee, yeah, you think? Okay, all right. Before the break, we were talking about the hitting versus your defensive position and things like that. And again, I think that a lot of kids, a lot of parents, are under the premise that, my kid's just got to be all-around superstar to get recognition and to look like that elite player. Well, you were just talking about the fact that, hey, I just had to pitch. Now, that's great once you're there, and the college coaches are trying to, mold that team. At the youth level, and maybe there's a stopping point where you don't have to be the all-round. Is it high school? When can you start becoming a specialist so that you are looking more attractive to the college coaches?
Right. Well, first, I think it's important to note that utility players are needed in college. So if you don't ever find a specialty, it's not the end of the world. Although if you never find a specialty because you're just not good enough at any of those positions, you need to work on getting better. If you're an outstanding athlete that just has the capability of playing every position, I have 2 on my team right now that one got recruited as a utility player, and they're trying to figure out where they're going to put her because she's such a good athlete. They don't know what they're going to put her, what position they're going to play.
Because she can do
anything.
anywhere.
Right. So there is that option for utility, but not at the expense of being a good athlete. So when you're looking to kind of narrow down, specifics, whether it be pitching or catching or shortstop or whatever, if you need to solidify yourself in one specific position, then do that, and then start to dabble in the other ones. And if it ends up that you're a utility player, then you're a utility player.
Okay.
But above all, and
Excellent.
I say this is important because you hear coaches say it all the time, because I know I say it and I know college coaches say it. If you hit the ball, you'll find a place for you in the field. And college coaches specifically, if you can mash that ball wherever you can play, they will find a place, whether it's out in right field, whether it's, they train you for first base, or, in a lot of cases too. Well, let me go into that first, is if you can hit that ball, you're going to be in great shape, right? Pitchers should nowadays learn how to hit just as well as they pitch, and focus on that, and focus on that craft. Back in my day, you could usually get by without having to pitch. Now times are changing. Coaches are starting to look for a more well-rounded athlete.
Gotcha.
And if you always have to DH for the pitcher, then your lineup is weaker. So if your pitcher can hit, then you can DH for literally your weakest hitter on the team, as opposed to just for the pitcher who doesn't hit. So that's important. The other thing is, if you play shortstop, you need to prepare, at least in college, to play any other position. There are some people who play shortstop and they just want to play shortstop, and that's it.
Yeah.
Now, usually your shortstop is the best athlete on your team. So you put her at shortstop because that's kind of the heart of your infield.
Sure.
Right.
That being said, college coaches will tend to recruit 9 shortstops, right? And then use 9 shortstops within their field.
And basically, move them to,
Right.
which is a good point and really a good tip for our younger athletes out there. Keep your head flexible, meaning, be open to, but I'm the superstar, I'm the shortstop.
Right.
Well, you might go to that college and end up playing first base,
Right.
and it's not the dramatic position that you've always been accustomed to.
Right.
Of course, at the collegiate level, in my opinion, they're all dramatic, especially when you get to that level of
Right,
talent.
of course.
So that's a great tip to keep an open mind and be receptive to being able to accept those positions.
Right.
Okay, so go ahead. So the train for that.
Yeah, I mean, if you are a shortstop and you can play all those positions, to me, it's a detriment if you are unwilling to change that position. And so there's one problem with any athlete that I've ever seen. It's their unwillingness to buy into a college program. And when you don't have a set of kids that are motivated in the same direction, you're in trouble. So you want to, not only do these coaches recruit, specific positions, they're recruiting up here. Do you fit our team?
Right.
And there could be those, a perfectly good athlete that doesn't get recruited by a program because they know that it's just not the right mold for their team. And you can't take, a lot of people get really upset about that. Oh, that team didn't want me. Why not? I'm getting recruited by this bigger team over here. Well, it just might not fit. It's not because you're not good or, whatever. It just might
could be
not
just
fit.
the personality.
Right.
And we stress that. We get a lot of emails and questions about, different things of how should I carry myself? What do I have to, what are the coaches looking for when I'm on the field? And, anybody can look awesome after they just crushed one out.
Right.
I mean, obviously. What happens when you strike out? What's your mannerism like? What's your attitude? Do you toss the bat? Are you pissed off? Do you see that you're taken down a notch? Do the coaches see that? Instead of just saying, "That's all right, come on, let's pick it up and pick me up, and that I hate to say it, but kind of the raw mentality.
Right. And this is probably going against what a lot of people say. I don't necessarily think it's bad to show some sort of emotion.
Sure.
That being said, my coach told me all through the World Series, you better be emotionless. They better not know if you're frustrated or not.
Right.
For me, if you don't show some level of, a brief second of emotion, meaning, you grab your bat and you're just, there's that,
Right.
dang it, I just struck out feeling.
Yeah.
But then you hustle off the field and you go motivate your team.
Right.
It's a brief
Right.
second, because if you show that brief second, it shows that you want it. And I don't
that's
think there's
drive.
anything right.
Yeah, I think, and we're any of us who have been competitive or in
Yeah.
competitive sports. Oh yeah,
Right.
Believe me, I've blown my gasket. Every now and then I still do, but you're right. There's a difference between that competitive show versus, well, we're going to lose.
Yeah.
To hell with it.
Throwing
I'm
your
pouting
helmet,
and
pouting and going off the field, not talking to your teammates when you get in there when they're all saying it's okay, you'll be okay, not giving them a high five, things like that. You have to continually motivate your team, even despite the fact that you're unhappy with yourself at the moment.
Sure.
And that's huge. And beyond that, what coaches are really going to look at is, you struck out last at bat. How did you adjust and how did you come back this at bat? Pitchers, you gave up a home run. did you strike out the next batter or did you give up a hit? Because if you gave up a hit, all of a sudden, now I'm thinking, well, geez, you just break down. You give up a home run, it gets worse and
Once
worse
you're
and worse.
tagged, game's over.
Yeah, you've got to get better. You've got to come back, and you've got to. It's almost like having. I always joke about it, it's like having amnesia. If you struck out, if you gave up a home run as a pitcher,
Make an error, or whatever the case may be.
you just have to kind of respect that it happened and then move on
and
forget about it,
and know that you're not going to make every single play. You're not going to strike every single person out.
Right.
Balls get through. Even the pros. I mean,
and the hard part about softball is that it's a game of perfection, and a group of kids that play want to be so perfect, and a lot of times things work out that aren't perfect. I always tell my kids, you play the game. Right. Obviously, there's technique and there's things that you have to focus on.
You bet.
But if you're so worried about whether it's pitching technique or, for pitchers, it's a lot easier to explain. If you throw an outside pitch, or you're supposed to throw an outside pitch and it ends up going down the middle and it's a strikeout, it worked.
Right.
Was it right? Not necessarily.
Right.
So there's that level of being imperfectly perfect, if that makes sense, and accepting that, it worked and therefore it was good, and kind of setting up your perfection as, what works and what doesn't work, as opposed to, I wasn't supposed to throw it there. Because if you focus on all the times you miss your spots, pitchers, forget about it. You're going to be so down on yourself. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I threw it down the middle and thank God that it didn't get hit back at me.
Yeah, you were already expecting it. Yeah, sure.
So you have to kind of accept those things. But the big thing is, how do you handle yourself when you go through that adversity? And it's, do you come back stronger? Do you support your team? Do you bounce back? And that is the $1 million question. How do you test that? How do you train for that? How do you show that? And, it truly is. If a kid has it, they exude it. You can't, in my opinion, there's a level of not being able to build it. If you're, or the type of person that gets down on yourself, you can work at it.
Right.
But sometimes it never gets out of your system. And there's just kids that can handle it and kids that can't.
Gotcha. All right, so we've hit a good point now. We're going to take a quick break. Going to pay a few bills, get some snacks, all that kind of stuff. When we come back, we're going to get back into a few items that will be a little more, we'll say a little more scholarship and recruiting oriented. So stay tuned and join us here in a few minutes. Thanks.
Through the strength of our management team, our geographic presence, and our world-class value-added services, the Marsh & McLennan Agency provides public and privately held companies with risk management and employee benefit insight that helps enable you to flourish in this ever-changing and competitive market. Let Marsh & McLennan Agency help you identify, plan for, and respond to critical business issues and risks. For more information, call Marsh & McLennan Agency today at 888-292-9806.
All right, welcome back to the Breakdown. I'm Roger Tillis, your host, here with Chuck Olesker, our co-host, and our very special guest, Jennie Ritter, pitcher extraordinaire, joining us. We've been sharing a little bit of the basics as far as youth softball and high school and whatnot, and we ended our last segment talking about burnout. The pressure of the parents and things like that, and it is prevalent. I mean, we do see a lot of that, not just in softball, but in sports in general. We see it in the youth level. We definitely see it in the high school level. And, I want to make a point. The fact is, kids can change their mind. I mean, I've seen kids be rocket solid in their sport, and then they get to their junior, senior year, and, they're more into cars and being social, and it's just a natural change. And the parents flip out. Parents, understand something. We're dealing with human beings. Kids, adults, anybody can change their mind about something. Maybe all of a sudden the allure of the sport just isn't there. There are a million reasons why kids change their mind. Yes, you want them to get the coveted scholarship, but are you getting it for financial reasons, or are you getting it for bragging rights with your friends? You got to take that garbage out of the equation and think, what is best for my child? Not every single kid plays sports. Not every single kid that is in sports will go to the next level or be superstars. There's such a broad range. So help your kid, support your kid, find out where their place is, and help them get to where they want to go. Be it, the collegiate level, scholarship, whatever the case is. Because having a kid burnout in sports, especially at a youth age. And when I say youth, pre-middle school, 5th, 6th grade maybe. To see any kid just say, man, I don't want to do it anymore. It's no fun. That's a shame. And you're robbing your child of a great experience, a potentially really great experience, if you let them just develop naturally. So, and I'm sure, again, you may or may not know this about Jennie, but she currently coaches. She coaches an elite, group of gals on a softball team, and she's always been involved, obviously, in that. I imagine you've seen some examples of the burnout where, or the over-pressured parents or coaches can ruin it for the kids.
Absolutely. I think, when you're at a 18 and under gold level, obviously all these kids are looking to get scholarships. And when they're not getting the scholarships they want, or not getting the looks that they want, because whether it's their kid didn't perform in the game, they're not doing their work by emailing the coaches, however it may be, that puts a ton of stress. These parents are spending money. They want to make sure that they're doing everything they can to get their kid that scholarship. And when their kid doesn't get the scholarship, there's got to be something wrong.
Right.
And, a lot of times the last thing they'll do is look in the mirror at home and say, my kid didn't put the time in at home. My kid didn't do this. My kid didn't do that. And really, beyond that, what's stressful about it is some kids just don't have the talent. And that's a hard thing, because I'm a believer that if you put the work in, there's a place for everybody.
And you can raise that talent level.
Right, and you can raise that talent level. And, number one, it's not always the case. You're absolutely right. Kids, not every single kid plays in college. And, that's a heartbreaking thing for me, because I'd love to see everyone do it. But, the other part of it is that you have to put the effort in, and a lot of times people think they're doing enough if they're just paying for lessons and they're, paying for a travel team.
Sending them to camps and whatnot.
Yeah, sending them to camps. That's one time. What do you do with that knowledge that you get? Do you go home? Do you work at it? Do you get better? Do you learn how to self-analyze, which is my biggest thing as a pitching coach? You see me once a week at best, and I'm going to give you as many tools as I can. You better go home and work on them.
Use them.
Come back so that you can get more tools.
Right.
Don't come back and work on the same things over and over again. And that's, for me, and I assume for many coaches, hitting coaches or whatever, even travel ball coaches, if their kids don't get better every time they see them, that's a frustrating thing.
Sure.
And we can't be with you all the time. My travel team practices maybe 5 times a year, if I can think, maybe a couple more. But, we, between high school ball and all these things that go on, you don't have that time every single day to kind of hone their skill. So you have to count on them to go out and do the work themselves. And, even though you think you're doing enough, going through repetition after repetition doesn't necessarily mean you're doing it right. You need to analyze yourself, videotape yourself, go play it back, be hard on yourself.
Make those adjustments where needed.
Yeah, I can't tell you a time where when I was training, I didn't ask somebody to videotape me so that I could go back and play it back and see, did I do it right? Did I not do it right? And there's positives and negatives of that. Obviously, you can be frustrated with yourself because it's just not right every time you see it. But visually, you're able to adjust. And then when you do it right and you play it back, you get to kind of sit in glory for a moment and say, look at me,
positive
I did it right.
reinforcement.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, and so video analysis to me is one of the biggest things that you can do. But every single day, even if it's your day off, you go and you visualize something that has to do with softball or your sport, because the ones who are at that high level do that without even thinking.
Sure.
And not everybody's like that. So if you have to force yourself to do it, then you better force yourself to do it. But you can't expect to be on their level when they're doing more work than you.
Right,
You
right.
know?
Well, and the thing is, it's a simple point, but it's amazing how it's overlooked.
Right.
Now, you said something. You were talking about, and we've mentioned this throughout the show. that we mentioned travel ball and club ball and this and that, and boy, there's a big, riot brewing on the horizon. And this isn't just with softball, but this is with other sports as well, where because of, and I'm going to say it, my show, we get to say what we want.
Exactly.
It's about the money. Ultimately, it all comes downhill about the money and the pressure to be on top because it attracts more money. And this is just how it all relates. So now we have basically year-round ball. I mean, when I played, you could mark your calendar. You knew opening day, closing day. Now there's elite teams, there's travel, there's club, there's association, there's special tournaments, and this is all in addition to softball, or we'll say in this case softball at the high school level. And I'm not saying that stuff is bad. it's great, actually. It's tremendous extra opportunity. Where we're having an impasse, the two sides of this riot is one or the other. You got to choose. Well, I don't want to play high school ball because, not all the best talents at the high school level, so I'm not going to get all the good looks from the college coaches. I'm going where the heat is, baby. I'm going to the elite and only the elite. And the high school coaches, you got to either play for me or you don't play at all. I don't want you out there playing because it takes away your. And of course, this is all the coaches. There's so many different coaching mentalities. Some coaches say, hell, play as much as you can play. It's like any other sport. The more time you get on the diamond, the more trips at the bat, you're just going to get better. So sure. Some of the elite travel coaches, some say, don't worry about your high school. I mean, this is where you want to focus.
Right.
So and I know that there's different strategies. But what we find and what we hear from a lot of the high school coaches, it's they feel like it's killing high school softball because of some of the pressure put on some of these good kids. We had a volleyball coach on the show, and he said, it was heartbreaking that we went to play a certain rival team, and we really didn't get to play their best because 4 of their players were away that weekend playing at a elite tournament with their club team. So it took away from, and that's where they feel that there's some pain at the high school level. Now, with all that hot air that I just threw out there about that, I mean, you've been on all sides of it. You get it. You know where I'm coming from. What's your take as far as the proper placement? And maybe there is no answer. Maybe it's just it depends on the coach.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, part of it is, number one, in softball specifically, if you want to get recruited and you want to go to college, you've got to play travel ball, period. They
write that down. You have to play so you're saying that if you just play high school and are pretty darn good? So you're saying chances are you probably aren't going to get enough looks.
When are the coaches going to see you? I mean, that's the thing is these coaches know, number one, the top tournaments to go to. They know the top teams out there. And unless you're at one of them and you're in their face, they're not going to remember you. So if you're a good high school athlete, that you could be the best athlete in the country, and you're just playing high school ball, and you send your video out and you send your emails out, and these coaches see your video and they say, wow, you're pretty good. I've got to go see you. And you're never where they are. That's taking an entire recruiting day for them just to come visit you in that high school season.
And video's not enough. They don't want to see you hitting, taking batting practice and stuff. Video will get you
looks as far as, a coach will come and watch you on the trail, on their recruiting trail. But you will never, well, I shouldn't say never. I've never heard of a time where anybody has offered a scholarship based
It's possible, not probable.
It's possible, not probable.
Right.
I would not gamble on it, that's for sure. Videos are designed to show those coaches that you do have game and that you do have the ability to play for them, and that makes them come out and watch you. But you have to be, you can't be... you have to pick the good tournaments, too. You can't play Little League. I mean, college coaches in general, from what I understand, don't go watch Little League, and I know it's getting to the higher level.
Right.
Travel ball, in my opinion, is the one area where you see college coaches going all over the place. I've seen kids from Michigan when I grew up that went and played in California, because that's where all the college coaches
That's where
were.
the congregation was,
right.
Yeah.
Good for Florida in the sense that Florida is starting to build a good group of college coaches that will come down here. But even then, they want you to come to the Premier Nationals, which is out in California. So they want you to be in a tournament that you're going to be seen. So you definitely...
So I just want to confirm this again for people that are watching, because there's probably a portion of our audience that are sitting there going, well, we don't have that type of elite travel ball, and I can't pick up and move to another state just to. So the it's almost like I've got to pay to be seen. If I don't have the money, I could be, like you said, the best athlete. But if I can't pay to be seen, chances are I'm where I am.
Right.
This is as good as it gets.
And unfortunately, there is that level of. This is an expensive sport. Bottom line, it's an expensive sport. You need to be on a team that's going to get you exposed. If you're only on a local area, then you're only going to get those local coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that being said, there are coaches camps that are local. I know, I want to say Florida State, for example, has several colleges that come and work their camp.
Mm-hmm.
There's another camp, I can't tell you the name of it because I don't remember, that brings in a group of college coaches. So if you're local and you want some of these coaches to see you, those are the opportunities to go get seen there.
Okay.
If your dream, for example, is to go play for Stanford or UCLA, you better go to their camps. You better find a way to get out there because they won't come this way.
And that's what I was going to ask you. Let's say if I'm not playing on a travel team, but I can go to maybe 2 college camps during the summer. Mm-hmm. I go to Michigan's camp and I go to UCLA's camp. Mm-hmm. But typically with camps and combines and all that for a lot of other sports, you're not really getting a look at. What our recommendation has always been is you contact the coach well in advance, let them know you're going to be there, and try to lock down some real evaluation time.
And coaches have set up elite camps now where it's not necessarily invitation only, but they'll close it off, I believe, when they know they have a certain amount of athletes, and they only market it to the group that they know they want to see.
Right.
And that's kind of their way of being able to run a camp and see that talent. Now, when
Weed
you get
cattle.
there, when you get there, they're looking at not only your skill and your ability, because they want to see you game situation. I mean, camps aren't game situation, but what they can see there is, are you coachable? Do you respond? Do you soak up the knowledge? Do you make good adjustments? These are things that they can't see in a game. So there is value to coming to that camp and getting to know them in that way. I was a camp girl. I went to Michigan camps, I think, since I was 12. And, when I got to college, there was, girls that had watched me in camp. My nickname was Camper. I mean, I literally had been around enough. And so to say that, and I've heard just through broadcasting this year, coaches telling me, she's one of our camp kids, so you do get recruited from camps. So to say that you wouldn't have the opportunity to go to UCLA, Stanford, those over in the West, if you just went to their camps, that's not necessarily true.
Okay, good, good.
But there is a level of a cost there. I mean, California specifically is a very large populated softball community, and they're good.
Sure.
And as much as I hate to say that, because I want to believe that the world is starting to even out and everybody has the same level of talent, they're a dense population. There's going to be more talented people.
Sure.
There.
Oh, by all means.
Right. And so they don't necessarily have to go too far away to get the good talent that they need. Plus, they're getting in state, and it's cheaper for them. So if you have a dream school to go to, you have to invest into getting to that dream school. If they're not going to come to you, you can't, you have the option, I suppose, to get mad that they're not coming to you and get mad that, you can't afford to play on a team that comes to them. Or you can do something about it and make it your priority to get out there. And,
excellent point.
To me, like the economy is not great, and we're all in a position where every dime counts, every penny counts. And you have to choose what's the best thing for your kid at that moment.
Sure.
And if it means that maybe you can't go to UCLA, but you have an opportunity to go play at Florida State, well, shoot, Florida State's a good academic school. UF, a good academic school. Maybe you just have the dream of playing softball, not playing in college.
And that's a great point. You bring up a couple of things. First of all, and when people say, well, gosh, if you can get the best talent, across the nation, grab it. Well, you hit on something that a lot of people don't think about, and they don't realize from a collegiate standpoint. If I'm a college coach and I have X amount of dollars to utilize for my team scholarships, well, I happen to know that I only need to spend this portion if I get a kid from my state, as opposed to 3 times that amount for the same, to bring a kid in. Well, I can get more bang for the buck. Now, used to be, and it's kind of cyclical, it used to be, well, you had to go outside because you needed the talent. Well, because there are so many hundreds of thousands, millions that are playing softball, and so many good players, at such a high level, they can be a little choosy. And if that means, so I stick to the people in my backyard so I can get more bang for my buck, so be it. Right. That's just the cycle that we're in now.
Right. And the best kids that you're going to see these days, the best shortstop in the area, you can look and say, man, she could go anywhere. Well, she's a dime a dozen when it comes down to it, and
that's exactly right.
And when you want to go to those big D1 schools, the SEC, the ACC, the Big Ten, the Pac-12, the Big 12 now? They all changed.
Yeah, I was going to say, take your pick, throw a dart, the big whatever that number is.
Those schools have thousands and thousands of kids contacting them.
Right.
So the question is, number one, how do you look different? And number two, do you stand out? Are you in their backyard? Because that's helpful. You know,
Right.
I was in the backyard of Michigan. Did that help? Absolutely.
Sure. Well,
You know?
you were easy to get to. They didn't,
Right.
like you said, they
They
didn't
came
have
to
to
my high
travel
school
and
games.
travel.
We talk about, not colleges not coming to your high school games. Hutch showed up to one of my high school games. It was after I was already committed, but she did show up, and you just don't see that very
Right.
often. And the odds of that happening are so slim unless they really want you. But again, there's probably 7 pitchers in each class that are just the top elite pitchers that everybody wants, and then you drop down a level of the fairly good
The
ones.
other thousands.
The other thousands, yeah. I mean, and there might be some variations of that, but
Sure.
in general, I mean, the majority of pitchers are throwing 60, 61, 62. If you're 65 plus, you probably are in the top elite, group of 7 to 10 kids. But then there's that difference of, can you make the ball move? Can you make it spin?
Right.
And that's what separates you a little bit more.
Right.
But,
What's got you? Yeah. Where's your
right.
hook?
I mean, how many times, and if coaches watch this, it's how many times have you seen a pitcher that thinks they throw higher than 60, 61, and they're literally 58 to 61, and that's just the going speed right now.
Sure, sure,
And
yeah.
it is cyclical. Sometimes you get the higher speeds, sometimes you get lower. My generation specifically with Abbott and Osterman's a year older than me, but Hollowell, the pitchers that era all through mid-60s or higher. So nowadays you're seeing the top athletes that are pitching that high level. And then you find the ones that can move the ball and get you outs more than anything.
Right. Just not throw the heat, but get the good result.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, parents, when you watch us, I know we've kind of knocked you a little bit.
Sorry, parents, fuck up a little bit.
It's important to
there.
realize that as good as your kid is, there are other people that are just as good, if not better, and everywhere. I mean, even the best, you look at Crystal Busso's probably the best hitter in the world. Her mom probably thinks she's the best hitter in the world, but there's probably somebody out there who's very equivalent to what she can do.
Sure.
And, in my opinion, I think she's the best hitter in the world, and I look at her and I'm like, I don't know if there is anybody better, but, someday there might be. And so you have to be prepared for that. And she's one person out of a pool of millions.
Right.
And so you can't expect that your kid is on that level. But one thing I will give the parents credit for that I wanted to say and touch on is, kids getting washed out and all that stuff. The parents have that stress because they're putting money into that kid. And obviously when we talk about
It's like an
money,
investment.
right?
Yeah.
They're investing into something. They're taking a huge gamble on a kid. You're right. That can change their mind and make decisions.
See it all the time.
You can't knock parents for getting frustrated when their kid doesn't want to work. But at the same time, kids, when you're watching this, realize what kind of investment and effort your parents are putting forth to get you to that next level. And, I always tell my kids, thank their parents all the time. Recognize that if they tell you they can't afford it or they just can't do it, there's probably a reason.
Sure.
If your dreams go to UCLA and your parents can't do it, you either need to find a way on your own, which is going to be hard.
Get a job.
Yeah,
or flip some burgers.
Or accept that it might not be a possibility. And, ideal situations are great, but not everything's ideal. Most things
doesn't
aren't
always
ideal.
work out that
Right,
way. No,
right.
you're right, and that's a good point because you're right. The parents do get a lot of knocks. The kids, to me, it's a communication thing.
Mm-hmm.
The kids and the parents, from the very beginning, have to make sure that we're communicating. We understand. You have to understand my side. I understand your side,
Yeah.
and it's a joint decision. We talk about team. And you need a good support group, especially when you get to that higher level and you are starting to look for recruiting potential and things like that. So just communicate, and really that'll solve a lot of the problems. Good communication.
Right.
Now, something that you touched on, and I wanted to talk about this, is the you don't have to play Division I. You don't have to go to Michigan. There are the different levels of the NCAA, 2, 3. You've got, of course, yes, you don't get the athletic scholarships, say, at the Division III or the Ivy Leaguers, but that's where your grades can really help you out. If you want to play for Princeton, it's been your dream to attend and play for Princeton, get the grades and go play ball for them. So, open your opportunities that way. Excuse me. Also, you have the NAIA. You have JUCO. I mean, there's a lot of, like you said, if you want to just go to college and play ball and have a college experience, it doesn't have to be the top tier. So do your research, look around, see what else is out there. By gosh, at that point, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll get into some final closing tips, put some myths to rest, and we'll take it from there. Thanks for tuning in. There are thousands of high school athletes that want to play at the college level. They just don't get noticed. At ViewMySport.com, we get your game out of the shadows and into the college spotlight. It's fast, easy, best of all, it's free. In the time you can text your friends, you can create and send your own athlete profile to as many colleges as you want. Get to the next level. Visit ViewMySport.com today and follow the 3 simple steps. Why wait? Your competition's not. All right, and we're back. Thanks again for joining us. We're going to wrap some things up here and come up with some final nuggets of wisdom. Certainly not from myself or Chuck, but certainly from our guest, Jennie Ritter, who has been outstanding today. And again, thank you so much for joining us today. We closed out on some pretty good notes, and we had a great discussion during the break. We've covered so much. But we're talking about other colleges and opportunities and things like that. And the fact is, and you mentioned this, dreaming to play Division I softball. That's one dream. Then there's dreaming just to play collegiately, period. Who will take me? And there is a long, long distance between those 2 points. For the good. For those that want to play at the top level, obviously, it's very hard. There are so many great players, and we were talking about that. You can have the best kid in your association through all their travel teams, but you might be one little corner of one state, and that kid's best can't even get on the bottom 10 of another state. You have to really look at things realistically and go in with that mindset. I'm not saying don't try, but I'm saying you have to realize there's somebody that could be out there better. So don't sit back on your thumb singing, hey, I'm good here, so I'm good everywhere, because that's unrealistic. But the thing is, you have to be realistic. And that's what we were talking about when you're setting your goals and trying to decide what it is that I want to do. Do I want to try to play that D1, or am I going to take whatever, NAIA Division II, whatever the case may be? So as you go through the process, and this is not just for the kids, for the athletes, but for the parents too, check the egos at the door. Look at the realistic aspects. Where am I good? Am I getting any looks? Am I getting any interest whatsoever from D1? Well, if not, then maybe I bump down to D2. Hey, here's an idea. Maybe as you're starting the recruiting process, get your information out there to the NAIA, to the Division 3, 2, etc. Throw it out there and start seeing who pays attention. If you're not getting any D1 interest, well, it might be for a reason. So,
I always tell my kids, you start at the JUCO level. And if your dream is to play college softball, let's start at the JUCO level. Let's get you something. Okay?
There you go.
And let's build from there. That doesn't mean you commit. It just means you start and you know that there's an option. Okay.
Sure.
Now I have JUCO. Now I can work my way up.
Like it.
And then, no, in comment to your there are athletes out there, and I can't say I'm not one of them, that had a dream to play D1, and it was D1 or bust. And for me, my dream was so much bigger than just to play softball in college. In fact, if I didn't get a D1 scholarship, I'm not sure I would have played, which is, there are those people that have that personality.
Sure.
Do I want to put the work in for a smaller level? Some people do. And I'll tell you what, there's millions of people out here that just love softball so much that they do that. Now, I love softball too, but there is a level for me that I have to kind of limit myself because I don't want to get washed out. You know what I'm saying? So there is that level, and there are athletes like that. In a lot of cases, if you believe that, you have the ability to get to that level. So you have to be careful. You have to be realistic, again, like you said, that if you can make D1 and that's your dream to go D1, then set that goal. But you better put the work in, again, to get to that level.
And not just in the skill set, but in the classroom.
Right.
For sure.
Right.
For sure. Well, now, again, we could break down every little aspect of the recruiting and whatnot. I think we've touched base on the primary points. And I know we talked about club versus high school and things like that. And we pretty much come to terms. There is no one particular answer or path that you should follow. I think it's a matter of the parents and the kids sitting down and discussing, okay, where is it that we want to end up? Does that mean, we're not really focused so much on the high school aspects? We want to get where the heat is. We want to do the travel ball because, like Jennie, I want to be a D1er. I want to be on the mound. I want to be the leader. I want to be in that limelight of the top programs. Well, maybe then for you, certain individual, skipping playing at the high school level, and I can't believe I'm even saying that, but I'm going to say it because that's the reality of it. Maybe you skip playing high school level because it doesn't fit, with what your goals are, and you do play the travel ball and the elite teams and whatnot, so you can get to those tournaments and fast track yourself to where you want to be. For others, you just play high school, play travel, play anywhere you can play, and do the work, the recruiting process, get your information out, and see what happens. Is one better than the other? Nope. It just depends on you, the individual. So don't feel like you've got to, God knows you're competing enough in the classroom, you're competing enough out on the diamond. Don't feel like you've got to compete now in the recruiting process. This isn't about ego, okay. Athletes have egos. I know that was sort of I retract that statement because it's hard to turn that off. But you need to be smart. Hard work is great. Smart work is even better. So put the time in to do the recruiting process correctly. Be proactive. Get your information out there, and work it the best way you can. And then you hope for the best. I mean, really, when it all comes down to it, your control of that process is only so far. Once you've done what you can do, then it's a matter of, keeping the coaches up to date, staying in contact. Getting on the radar is one thing. Staying on the radar is a whole other animal. And you've got to, again, put in the smart work. I'm going to ask you, Jenny, if you had to come up with the top 3 best tips for the parents and for the athletes out there. I know out of the 100 probably that you have memorized, let's say that the 3 let's say for the parents and the players that are getting ready to enter into their high school careers, what do you think would be good examples and good tips for these kids and parents?
Entering into first things first, if you're entering into your high school career, you're a freshman, you're already starting to get recruited at that level. Okay. Nowadays, back in my day, I committed as a junior, and that was early. Yeah. Now it's like if you're a junior, you're way late. So they are committing freshmen at those big D1 schools. So unfortunately for athletes this time, and specifically in softball, is that you have to be careful you have to make sure that your talent is a certain level by your freshman year. And a lot of times kids peak later.
Sure.
And that's a real struggle. Oh, yeah. So it's difficult for some of those kids that do peak later because they might miss their window of opportunity. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not still spots that open up, but you have to be realistic about that. You need to start emailing coaches immediately. And again, it's how do you look different? You said that it's the key. I have one kid that tweets me regularly. Her name is Katie. She's from Arizona. She's a big Michigan fan. She writes a blog and literally copies and sends that blog to college coaches for them to read. And it helps you understand who she is, that she gets the process, and that she wants to be a top-level athlete. Do I know if it works? I haven't been that involved in her process, so I don't know, but it got me noticed. I noticed her.
Sure.
And, Crystal Busas, I think, also follows her. So there is a level of getting people in that world. The more contacts, it's who you know.
Right, absolutely.
Great point.
Yeah, so you want to, it's how different you can be. The other thing is, when you get noticed, you can't just send one email out per year to one coach. They're getting thousands of emails probably a day. I don't know, but it's a ridiculous amount of emails that they rarely go through. So how is your email going to look different? It's what does the subject of your email say? Once you get it, is it a name that they've noticed several times over? So you send it once, you probably won't hear anything. You probably never hear anything, really. Coaches see it.
It's rare, depending on the size of the program, certainly.
And then when you go into a tournament, you email that coach and say, we're going to be at this tournament, here's our schedule. When you leave that tournament, you update them and tell them how it went. If they were there, you thank them for coming.
Yep.
You have to drill them to remind them of who you are.
Sure.
And if you are always, always, always in their face, that's why camp is so important. Put a face to a name, to an email. All of a sudden, here you are, here's this kid, she really wants to play here, Now I know who she is. If her talent's there, I'm going to put her on the radar. If her talent's not there, I'm going to move on. But it allows them. There's so many kids, again, that you have to kind of make yourself stand up.
Separate yourself.
Right.
Sure. Right.
I think being realistic is important. For me, I'm probably one of the most unrealistic people on earth because I think every kid that I talk to if they work hard enough and follow the right pathway, they're going to be a D1 athlete. It's not the case, unfortunately, as much as it breaks my heart.
It's nice to dream.
Yeah,
you know?
and like you said, there are thousands of kids out there that are at the same level of talent as your kid is. So don't corner yourself into believing that your kid is the only kid that has that level. I think if you accept that, and then it's out of your control. You can't control certain situations. So again, control what you can control. Take your kid to the practices. Make sure they're working. Make sure your kid's doing the work, that they're being motivated on their own. If you can honestly go through that whole situation, the whole recruiting process, and know that at the end, your best opportunity was a D2 school, but you put in every ounce of work possible to get to that D2 school, then you know you're in the right place. And I think when you have questions or doubts or regrets or any of those things that make you feel like you could have, should have, would have done something different,
Right.
That's when there's frustration and anger or whatever,
Sure.
and not believing that it's the right situation. But if you know you've done every single possible thing you can and you still ended up at a certain result, then you know you've done everything to get there.
Certainly.
And I don't believe, even me, I can go back and look at my career and think there's things that I could have done better. And so I don't think anybody can look and say, we've done everything.
Yeah, that was perfect.
Yeah.
To add to that too, and that's all great information, and that very much coincides with how View My Sport, tries to help educate the parents and the kids. Something to add to that too, you can do everything right. You might look back and think, God, we've done everything we can. And it still may not work out with the result that you're looking for. Right. That is the reality. But a step further, when you're going through this, and we talk about softball, or sports in general, but you got to look at the college, the school, the class aspect. You have to be there socializing. There is a social element to college. Obviously, the academic aspects. You might find the perfect softball setup, but everything else may not mesh. You want to see someone wash out of a team. I can't tell you how many athletes that I've seen where we do a little follow up to see what's going on. All of a sudden they're not there anymore. They've switched schools because they left that out of the equation.
Right.
So I think we talk about being smart. Can you expand
Absolutely.
on that a little bit?
Well,
your opinion on that?
Academic wise, again, this goes back to being realistic. No woman athlete is going to make millions of dollars in their sport. Even Jenny Finch doesn't, right? Now, she makes a pretty good salary, and she's one softball player out of tons.
Until they bring NASCAR to college sports,
Right, until they bring NASCAR to college sports. But, the bottom line is that if you are a woman athlete, you have to prepare for the future, no matter what it is. So, for me, my number one goal was always go to college first for academics and then pick the softball team that matches the academic school. I was lucky that Michigan,
Very
I wanted to be
so.
an engineer. Michigan had the highest one, and that's why I wanted to play in college. Doesn't happen always.
Right.
If it does come down to maybe a partial scholarship to a full scholarship and academics are better at the partial, that's something you have to discuss with your parents. Because, again, you need to, not only when you get to school, but you need to get to school and you need to get a degree that makes sense, that's worthwhile.
Right.
And if there's one thing I can tell kids nowadays that I will preach until I'm blue in the face and nobody ever listens is, if you have 4 free years of school that softball has given you, get a degree that makes sense. Take advantage. General studies is not going to get you a job, and especially in this economy and the way things go here. You have to find a degree that specializes you in something.
Sure.
Engineering, the medical field. If you want to be like communications, for example, it's wide range. Not only are you competing with other communications degrees, you're competing with those that didn't go to college that built their way up through the system.
Right.
So you may skip those levels, but the jobs are minimal. There's just not a lot of jobs offered.
Excellent point.
And, even college coaching, stuff like that. You can want to be a college coach, that's great, but you're going to be a volunteer assistant for 3-4 years before you even
You'll be doing a lot of grunt work. Right.
And so be realistic into what you choose to do. And it's not about how much money you're going to make. Again, I'm a big believer, and I think it's our generation on down as kids start growing up realizing you got to do what you love to do as opposed to what makes money. But at the same time, if what you love makes no money, you either have to live a certain lifestyle or, you can't have it all. And so that's an important thing. If you want to go to school and you have a passion to have a degree in some sort of business world and it doesn't make a lot of money, you have to accept that.
Right.
But do what you love to do, but at the same time, don't pick something general just because it's easier during softball
just so you can coast through.
Right,
yeah.
right.
Well,
And-
you're robbing yourself of an opportunity.
My gosh. Yeah, and you go back and the kids that I've seen that have graduated with general studies, like, what are your plans? You can't. Women don't have that opportunity to not think about what their future is. And I, like I said, in winning the national championship, I was so blessed to be able to create a life in softball.
Sure.
What I do is not, number one, it's not a big money maker, and which, I do it because I love it. It's a passion of mine. But at the same time, the opportunities are only there because our team won
You
the
were at the
national
top.
championship. It
Right.
was at the top.
Right.
And not to say that there are kids that play D2, D3 ball that aren't a college coach or don't have those abilities. It's just a little bit harder to get there.
Right.
So be
Right.
realistic again in your academic future as well. But always, always, always go to school for the academics first and then join that softball team.
Excellent advice, and I appreciate you elaborating on that because we talk about that a lot. I mean that's in again one of our core messages, and it's hard, with all the glitz and glamour and the drama and just the glory of especially
It's easy to
the
get
collegiate
wrapped
sports.
up in NCAA football. Those guys are going to go make millions if they're stars.
Sure,
We're
and
not.
we know that very few, even where there are the opportunities, they're still so far and few
Right.
between.
Right.
So I'm still kind of hanging on the fact that she said in our generation. So you're right, Jenny. In our generation, I think in our young spots of the life that we're, but yeah. Thanks. Suck up. Well, I tell you what, that pretty much covers the show. I think we've hit on a lot of things. Now, let me say this. Obviously, ViewMySport.com is available at any time. So don't just, take what you heard on the show today and think, well, okay, that's it. No. Go to the ViewMySport.com homepage, click on Contact Us. You may have unique questions, situations. You may have missed something or needed clarification. We are a resource available 365-24, man. You anything that you need, you let us know. If we don't have the direct answer, we know who to go to get that answer. Now, don't send me something saying, hey, get me a scholarship, because obviously that's, will help. ViewMySport.com has a lot of tools. We talk about being proactive and sending information out. We had the example of the one athlete with her own blog. Well, we've basically created a database in a blog-type environment free for anybody to use, so you don't have to go out and get that detailed. We've already done the work for you. So keep that in mind, and we always say there's no such thing as too much exposure. There's certainly no such thing as too many offers. So if you use ViewMySport.com to set up a profile, it's in our database that coaches use. You can send it right from the site out to these coaches, to the plethora. And if you don't know who the coaches are at the schools, we've got the directories for free right there on the site. So use the tools, and we're not saying only do that. Do that, plus do some other things. Find some other free sites that are out there. Maybe send special emails. One point is, just to close out, when you send it, and we talk about sending it again and keeping them up to date, pick up the phone and make a phone call too. Follow up and see if they saw it. Again, anything you can do to make that first impression a good one, and to stay on that radar, that's what it's all about. It could make the difference. Don't be lazy. If you're lazy, you're probably not going to be going to college to play sports. That's for sure.
Right.
So, all right, that's it. Chuck, I think we did a pretty good job.
Yep.
Jenny, again, thank you so much for joining us.
problem.
This was a lot of fun. We're going to have you on again because
Absolutely.
I have a feeling that there's a lot of stuff out there that we could break. I'm telling you, we're going to get some video. We got to see if I can hit her. I still, my competitive juices are flowing. I figure maybe if I wait 10 years and she'll slow down to about, 60, God, I'll take one to the cheek. All right. Well, again, from myself, Roger Tillis, your host, from Chuck Olesker, and again, our guest, Jennie Ritter, thank you so much for joining us on today's show. Tune in next week. Every week, we've got a fantastic guest to talk about recruiting, sports, high school, college, you name it. We'll get into it and try to help out. In the meantime, enjoy the ride.